The first spark of victory. A stolen chariot changed everything!
They copied the design and made it lighter.
Egypt began mastering chariots themselves.
Practice turned into deadly precision.
The invaders realized Egypt was no longer afraid.
War was inevitable!
The spirit of Egypt awakened.
A journey toward liberation began. The clash that would reshape Egypt approached. Thebes searched for every weakness in Hyksos lines. The enemy watched, confident in foreign walls. Engineers learned from each bolt and beam. Stronger weapons began to change the balance.
Step by step, the South reclaimed lost ground.
Every home carried the weight of hope.
Prayers rose for strength in the battles ahead.
Rumors spread of Thebes gaining courage. Warriors learned to ride faster, strike cleaner. Their bronze burned brighter than before. The invaders prepared for a long rule. But Thebes planned a different future. Even blessings became part of war. Even blessings became part of war. Sunrise meant movement, training, discipline. Across the land, two worlds mixed uneasily.
Old borders dissolved as power shifted.
Every detail mattered in the coming storm. The invaders sensed Thebes closing in. A new identity was being forged in courage. Night before battle, the land held its breath. Dawn arrived like a silent signal. The North braced for another rebellion. Orders passed quietly, but carried loudly. Speed became their greatest teacher. The invaders stood ready to resist. Even the skies watched the turning tide. Egypt had learned the enemy's greatest weapon. Arrows prepared. This moment would define generations.
Two powers charged toward a future neither could predict.
The land trembled with ancient thunder. A new leader would change everything. A new dawn rose over Egypt, and with it, destiny. Centuries of struggle now pointed toward one moment. Foreign powers had arrived with strange new beasts. Thebes prepared for a challenge unlike any before. The Hyksos still ruled the delta, their shadow long. Messages from the north carried warnings of change. Even the land felt the tremor of an empire shifting. Egypt turned to its gods to guide the coming storm. A young king stood ready to reclaim the nation. From these lands, a new empire would rise. Egypt prepared, not with fear, but precision.
The chariot, a foreign invention, became Egypt's weapon.
Innovation turned craftsmen into architects of power. Speed would decide the future.
And blessings were asked for every step Egypt would take.
Change swept in like the desert wind, relentless. Strategy blended with science. Egypt redefined war.
Night became the Council of Kings.
Preparation stretched from river to desert. Egypt gathered strength from every corner. Every hand shaped the coming empire.
Thebes transformed into a city of purpose.
Word traveled faster than armies.
Even the heavens were consulted for guidance.
Egypt's identity sharpened, unyielding. The land whispered news of movement in the north. Egypt's flame of ambition burned brighter. The foundations of an empire were set.
Thutmose's empire stretched like never before.
His armies crossed rivers once thought impossible.
Nations sent tribute, acknowledging Egypt's unmatched power. He ruled not only through force, but through strategy.
Yet Egypt still remembered the queen who built peace. Hatshepsut's legacy stood in stone.
The gods were thought to choose Egypt's rulers. A warrior pharaoh rose, fierce and unstoppable.
Speed became Egypt's new weapon.
His victories struck fear across borders.
Peaceful exchanges fed Egypt's wealth.
History was carved to make victories eternal. The divine guided Egypt's every decision.
Celebrations filled Egypt with life.
Then came a king whose reign shined like the sun. Amenhotep III transformed Egypt into a monument of beauty.
By his side stood Piye, powerful, intelligent, respected.
Egypt bloomed in peace and luxury. But behind the beauty, the gods held power. A prince looked to the sun and questioned everything. He shattered traditions that stood for centuries. He built a city for one god alone, Aten.
At his side stood Nefertiti, elegance made human.
Art changed, more human, more emotional. But Egypt's old faith prepared to strike back. The Sun King fell, his revolution fading.
A boy king rose to restore Egypt's ancient balance.
The old gods returned, stronger than ever. Tutankhamun worked to undo years of chaos. Temples revived their ancient colors. Egypt returned to its traditions and its pride. The revolutionary era faded into whispers.
Tutankhamun was young, but Egypt guided him.
Stability returned. Prosperity slowly followed. The gods once again smiled upon Egypt. And then, a king died too soon. His death marked the end of a fragile restoration. Horemheb rebuilt Egypt's justice and strength. The army became the backbone of the nation.
Diplomacy and discipline shaped Egypt's future.
A child destined for greatness began his training.
Seti restored Egypt's borders and its pride.
His victories were etched into eternity. Then came Ramses, a king who would shape legend. He forged Egypt into a military powerhouse. And he dreamed of monuments beyond imagination. A new age of stone giants began. But danger rose in the north.
The Hittite Empire prepared to challenge Egypt.
Ramses answered with unmatched determination. Egypt marched into history's most famous chariot battle.
The Hittites struck first. Chaos erupted.
Ramses fought with a fury that became legend.
Fresh Egyptian forces reached the front, shifting the balance of the day.
Neither side won, but both survived. The first peace treaty in history sealed their legacy. Peace reshaped diplomacy across the ancient world.
Egypt immortalized the accord in stone.
Ramses built a new capital of immense ambition. The city pulsed with life, commerce, and power.
He ruled not only with strength, but with vision.
The mountain itself bowed to his legacy.
Egyptian influence reached far beyond its borders.
Love and honor were carved into eternity. Trade enriched Egypt's coffers and culture. For decades, Egypt flourished under his long rule.
A king grew old, but his monuments endured.
With his passing, an era ended.
The empire began to strain under its own weight.
Successors struggled to maintain the power Ramses forged. Climate shifts tested Egypt's stability.
A new threat sailed from distant shores.
Ramses III stood against the storm.
The battle would decide Egypt's fate.
Strategy triumphed over chaos.
Victory came, but at a heavy cost.
The empire was saved, yet weakening. Internal betrayal shook the throne. Another great pharaoh fell.
Corruption spread as the central power faded. Authority fractured across the land.
Even the dead were no longer safe. Religion rose where kingship collapsed.
The empire that once ruled the world faded into twilight.
The glory of Egypt dimmed as the new kingdom fell. Power shifted into the hands of the Amun priesthood.
Egypt split into north and south, two worlds, one nation.
The priests became kings in all but name.
Far territories slipped away under foreign pressure.
People felt the collapse more than the rulers. A religious bureaucracy replaced royal command. Across the Delta, Libyan clans grew influential. They were hired as protectors and soon became rulers. They were hired as protectors and soon became rulers. The true decisions of state came from temple walls.
Weak leadership threatened Egypt's lifeline, its waters.
Diplomacy failed as Egypt lost prestige abroad. Libyan factions clashed for control of the Delta.
The priests managed the nation's wealth.
Borders weakened, and Egypt turned inward. Only the Nile remained constant in a changing land. Religion flourished, even as politics crumbled. The Libyan presence grew deeply rooted. The throne commanded respect, but little power.
Even the priesthood fractured into rival houses.
Egypt survived through craftsmanship, not conquest.
New threats emerged from every frontier.
The people defended themselves as best they could.
Libyan dynasties began forming their own lineages.
Temple wealth outgrew royal treasury by far.
Foreign guardians became familiar rulers. Foreign guardians became familiar rulers. A Libyan king finally claimed the throne of Egypt.
Libyan rule hardened Egypt's military strength. Foreign states sought favor with the new dynasty.
Egypt prepared to reclaim influence abroad.
Shoshenq's forces carved their path through the Levant.
His victories were carved forever into temple stone. Libyan clans became Egypt's new aristocracy. But unity soon collapsed beneath rivalry.
The land divided into competing local dynasties. Ambition replaced loyalty.
The South rejected Libyan rule. Religion again became a shield for power.
Politics ran on wealth more than authority.
Trade weakened under constant fragmentation.
Egyptian craftsmanship endured even in decline.
Multiple kings claimed Egypt at once.
Foreign powers sensed vulnerability. Internal divisions eroded their rule.
Symbols of power shattered across the land.
Meanwhile, a rising force grew in the south.
Kush prepared for a destiny intertwined with Egypt.
Thebes found new allies in Nubia.
Shared traditions brought the two cultures together. The north feared a new power rising.
Kushite warriors prepared for a greater purpose. Prophecy whispered, "A king shall rise from the south." Kushite leaders prepared to answer that calling.
The stage was set for a Nubian takeover. The Nubians watched Egypt and saw opportunity. Trade routes revived under Kushite protection.
Meanwhile, Libyan nobles argued endlessly over power.
The priesthood sought stability, even from the south.
A young prince, prepared for a destiny far greater than Kush.
Egypt's people suffered as rival rulers drained their wealth. Napata grew into a spiritual powerhouse.
Even soldiers sensed where true strength was rising. Records spoke of a coming shift in divine favor. Records spoke of a coming shift in divine favor.
Kushite forces strengthened with every passing season. Even cities questioned if Egypt could survive divided.
Piye knew his moment was drawing near.
In the north, kingship itself had lost its glory.
You gods of Kush placed their trust in Piye. Plans were laid to restore order to the land of the Nile. Egypt yearned for unity, even if from the south. The Nubians crossed the Nile with purpose. He offered peace to those willing to submit.
But one man, Tefnacht, refused to bow. The campaign began with steady victories.